The Oklahoma Sooners made it to postseason, had a very good first showing in the Chapel Hill Regional. They were able to take down the Cornhuskers with what seemed to be at ease. And then in the second round of that Chapel Hill Regional, the Sooners fell and fell pretty hard to the North Carolina Tar Heels. We're going to talk about that. I've got Brandon Schultz on with me today to talk about the Sooners and what they've done so far, looking ahead and what they've got to do to get out of the Chapel Hill Regional here on the Sooner Spotlight. Hello, everybody, and welcome into another episode of Sooner Spotlight. We are here with you live, so make sure to hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and jump in the live chat, too. We'd love to hear from you and go through the live chat, be able to maybe take questions, comments, whatever it is. Jump over there. Let me know what you think of the Sooners' possibility getting out of this regional, because it seems to have gotten literally 3 times harder now, and we're going to talk about that. First, have to mention that Sooner Spotlight is a member of the OU Insider content lineup. Go over to ouinsider.com today. Get signed up with the greatest Oklahoma Sooners sports community out there. You can be a part of the discussion. You don't just have to read articles, but you get so much more information over at ouinsider.com. So go get signed up today. Become a member of the greatest Oklahoma sports community out there. Let's go ahead and get into it. First, I'm going to bring in my guest of this morning. I almost said evening, but I got Brandon here with me. Brandon, thanks so much for joining.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me in, Josh.
Yeah, and Brandon's with the Oklahoma Baseball Experience over there, and of course Johnny couldn't make it with us, but it's kind of a tough discussion now. I was hoping that we'd have a little bit more of a lighthearted discussion and playful and energetic and excited about what's to come, but it seems to have gotten, like I said, 3 times harder because of course the Oklahoma Sooners lost last night, and kind of an embarrassing loss at that against North Carolina, and now they have to win twice today and then once tomorrow if they want to make it out of this regional. I guess I'll kind of let you go over first your thoughts. I guess you can go back to the Nebraska game too. What are your thoughts on the Oklahoma Sooners so far through this regional?
Yeah, let's talk about the Nebraska game. That's fun.
That's a
That's a good game to talk
much better
about.
topic to talk about.
Yeah, I think we really came out the way that we needed to. It was really good to see the offense score a lot of runs, which we haven't seen, I feel like, in a while. And so that was encouraging to see that the offense, certainly came to the Chapel Hill Regional. So I was excited to see that. I thought we got obviously really good pitching performance from Mac. It's kind of one of those things to me when we think about 2022 and that postseason, and Cade Horton made all of his money in the postseason. We kind of all know that, and Mac, with that pitching performance, might have made himself some money as well. So that's cool to see. We talk about it all the time about guys that you really would love to have back that you probably aren't going to get back. And it's one of those things. It's like, if he had the best game of his, potentially Sooner career, which is you could definitely put that out there as
Yeah.
a real possibility. It made him some money, but also that means that probably for sure locks him in as a losing him for next year. We'll see what happens, but I thought it was good. Again, I think the defense reared its ugly head again in that game late, and it caused a bit of a rally for Nebraska. But we had done so much damage early on that it didn't matter, which is really similar to where we fell in this game.
Yeah, and
Yesterday.
you brought up Malachi too. I mean, he did. He had. I mean, I would say the best performance, maybe obviously for his Sooner career, I think probably his best performance just because of the stage that it was on. I think he's had other games, and I'm trying to remember which one it was. He's had other games where he's had just as good of performances, probably. But not only that, but he also was reaching a very high velocity for him. I feel like he was hitting like 2 miles an hour faster and it just seemed like he was throwing with a pissed off mindset and just going
Mhm.
out there and putting it all on the line. Which on that big of a stage, yeah, I think that's what matters the most. And you're right. I think he probably made his money. He definitely showed some MLB scouts that I'm sure were watching this game. He definitely showed them that hey, my brother's really good, but I promise I've got something to prove here too.
Yeah. No, absolutely. So, all in all, it was, yeah, I mean, it was exactly what you'd want to, you know, see from him and what we needed from him. People talked about a lot about the gamble uh, of not throwing Kyson against Nebraska, and
Hmm.
what
Well,
happens if, but
and
the gamble.
I don't really agree with the whole gamble either because I don't think out of the three starters, obviously Kyson's the probably the best, and I don't think we can really argue too much there. But I don't think it was really much of a gamble. And I get that. I get that technically it was because you always want to put your best on the biggest stage. But Nebraska, throughout the season, Nebraska, if you were to take regular season Nebraska, I wasn't worried about that matchup. What I was worried about was late season and into postseason Nebraska when they just were going through a tear and beating Oregon, beating UCLA, and beating them with a conviction, coming back against Michigan State the way that they did. And that's a scary type of team to face. And so yeah, you have your argument there, but ultimately I was very confident with Malachi and his ability going against Nebraska, and I don't think Nebraska's as good as over half the competition that Oklahoma has gone against throughout the season. And so I didn't find it as much of a gamble. But you're right, he performed exactly how he needed to, and I think the defense really helped him out, which he doesn't get so often. I feel like Kyson probably got the defense that Malachi usually gets, which was kind of a little role reversal there for the Twins.
Yeah, and I definitely agree with you there. And we had a Nebraska radio guy come on our podcast last week, and we were talking to him, and I told him, no, of course we talked about predictions. I told him, no offense, but this game falls squarely in the should win category against
Yeah.
Nebraska. I mean, when you look at it, the way that OU has fared this season, when we look at losses, you know, we had a lot of really quality losses.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is, I mean, the ORU loss and the South Carolina loss, I think, are only two losses against teams that didn't make the postseason.
Well, and
Eh,
I think Johnny, and I even talked about the LSU sweep was like a couple of plays away from being a series win. So I mean that was
yeah,
another one, and then of course Vanderbilt, number one seed, Oklahoma run ruled them in a game. So
yeah.
yeah, I mean absolutely.
So it's been a wild postseason so far. Um, and I've really enjoyed it. I've been watching a lot of squeeze play. I've been watching a lot of college baseball. It's been really fun. There's been a lot of upsets, and I'm really enjoying it this year. But yeah, I think we're looking at the potential of today being the last season of OU baseball, unless they do something pretty special. I'm really hoping that we see them pull off a couple of big wins today, but I'm also coming to terms with the fact that I should soak in every minute of today.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I think when you get to the postseason, you always have to kind of take it that way, just because you are always one loss away from that much closer to the end of your season, and it's tough to put it in that light, and it's not that you're trying to be maybe a doom and gloomer or being pessimist about it. It's just that's the reality of it, especially when you have one loss going against another team with one loss, and today in Nebraska who would love to avenge themselves. And we'll talk a little bit more about that game for today, but then you also have to go against North Carolina, who has zero losses. They only need one win to close the thing out, and so where Oklahoma needs two against that team that just annihilated them last night against their best pitcher. And I mean, let's go ahead and jump over to that North Carolina game, because the commentators, I felt like the commentators on the broadcast were absolutely right. And I felt like I wasn't going to say it because I thought maybe I was being a homer by thinking it. But then I even saw a lot of other people online kind of very similar who aren't even Oklahoma media and at hand here, where he's throwing as good as he has all season, really. And I felt like he was hitting the mark and you could tell he was getting frustrated because he was hitting the mark and it's getting called a ball. And to be fair, it was happening to North Carolina just as much. And so I don't think it's not the umps are against us. It's just the umps just are inconsistent, and I felt like it wasn't that way against Nebraska. I felt like it wasn't that way against Nebraska, and so it was just frustrating to see. He must have been an SEC umpire because he came in there, calling the strike zone exactly like it, where it's kind of this shape, where it kind of goes all over the place, and and so you could tell that Kyson was getting frustrated. That probably fed into some of the missed throws. There was a couple of wild ones in there. But and there was even one too where I could tell he was trying to cook up a hard curveball and it just came out way too high.
Yeah.
So I mean, I just felt like it stunk for him because he only allowed 3 of those runs. And so those were only 3 earned runs against him, and so it just kind of showed the defense just not having his back. And then on top of that, when the hitters were finding his fastball. Obviously, a fastball is much easier to pound out of the park if you can connect with it right, and that's exactly what North Carolina was doing. And last night, North Carolina looked like an Omaha-bound team. To me, they looked like an Omaha-bound team.
Yeah, I mean, I think he only ended up giving up, I think, 3 earned runs. Which, if you would have gone into the game, I probably would have said he'd probably. I mean, they're a potent offense. I mean, 3 or 4 earned runs over. If you were to have made it, 6 or more innings would have been totally. I would have been like, that would have been huge if he could do that. And we just needed to be offensive enough to win the game. The only thing that the 2 things that I would just say is I thought he left more pitches up in the zone than he normally does. I mean, obviously he got tattooed, but I feel like he couldn't bury his curveball really well. And I think he was doing that against Georgia, really, having that thing drop off the table and in the dirt where he couldn't get hurt off of it. And I felt like there was a lot of curveballs that he was leaving up. And then just, I don't know what it was. I think it was a mix of the errors. And I mean, there was only one real error, but let's be realistic here. That's a double play that we should turn, 99 out of 100 times. I think the errors in the strike zone all combined, and it just unraveled for him a little bit. And he kind of lost a little bit of composure, which we just don't see, Kyson as much. He's not necessarily as emotional. He's, mentally, Skip's talked about it a lot, just really, really solid. And he got a little bit rattled, and we're just not necessarily used to seeing that from Kyson. I'm not putting any blame on him for that game or for getting rattled. I don't know how you don't get rattled when you should have been out of the first inning in 5 pitches. You set yourself up for, one of the gems of the regionals, if you get out of the first inning in 5 pitches. And it just kind of came unglued quick.
Yeah. Well, and on top of that, you have to recognize too, for him, it's even more emotional. You're closing out your career. This could be your last game that you're pitching in your entire collegiate career. And that is emotional. And so, yeah, I don't, pitching is, man, I don't know. I'm trying to think throughout all sports. Is there any position that weighs as much as pitching? I think quarterback would be similar because you in football, quarterback's facilitating the plays, but everything gets put on the pitcher. If there was 6 runs in that first inning, Kyson is blamed not by those of us who know better, but Kyson is blamed for those 6 runs, by the fan base, and so that bears a lot of weight, even though only, I don't think a single one of those 6 were actually earned runs against him. There's five total runs, which I do see in the chat. Caden says 6 unearned runs last night is just insane. Yeah, that's crazy. That's crazy that there were 6 unearned runs. And then also Larry Boxley also says, I think we need someone to call up a little Sooner magic. It felt like Oklahoma needed that in both Diamond Sports yesterday, and it just didn't pull through. But yeah, I mean, it's tough to be in that situation where you feel like you're hitting your mark, and like to your point, you're hitting your mark but then the defense just doesn't pull through, and that's frustrating. But you know that you're not going to blame your defense because
Mm-hmm.
things like that happen. And Skip has said that post game to us before, where he talked about Kyle Branch in one of the games where he dropped one and had an error, and it slipped through his glove. Do you feel like, as a fan, you're frustrated with Kyle Branch out there? As a fan, do you really want Skip Johnson to pull Kyle Branch out of second base? Well, no,
No.
like it's not that you wouldn't put that guy or Dawson Willis on third base. I think Dawson Willis has played great on third base all season long, and I don't think that there's any other guy that I would rather pull him out for just because he made an error. So there's things like that, and then I think I don't remember if it was Jackson or Kyle who made the throw over to
It
Taki.
was Jackson. Yeah, he
Was
was
it?
trying to, I think, take the double play himself.
Yeah, and I agree with you. I felt like that should have been an error, and Oklahoma was really lucky that Easton Carmichael darted up the line to get there on time too on that play. A tough loss for sure, and it felt like a complete blowout. But what I was saying going into the sixth inning, when I was going through this game, is okay. Oklahoma is getting absolutely murdered right now. There's no getting around that. Let's see, going into the sixth inning, they were down 9-0. You're not going to win this game, but can you do something to get yourself some sort of momentum to go in tomorrow? That's all you can really hope for right now. And honestly, there was even a moment where I know Dink and there was I'm trying to think of who else it was that we were kind of joking around. If Dawson Willis could have hit that home run to put the Sooners down only 4, I think going into the 8th or going into the ninth, one of the two, you have a little bit of hope.
You're
Maybe there's
saying
some
there's
Sooner
a chance.
magic here. Yeah. And so, we were kind of joking about that. But, I mean, it is the game of baseball is weird like that. So who knows? If you can get that one hit to get you down where it feels like it's manageable, you've got some life. So that being said, it just means that Oklahoma didn't give up. Oklahoma
Hmm.
didn't look at that 9-0 and just say, well, screw it. Let's just let them get one more run and just run rule. What?
Yeah,
Why?
and you need
Why
him to.
not?
And aside from getting some momentum into the next day, you needed to make them chase it a little bit.
Yeah.
North Carolina is extremely deep with pitching. I mean, even they were the team that I think had the best opportunity, even if they lost an early game, to actually still win the regional because they have such depth in pitching, and so you needed to make them chase it a little bit. Even if they didn't have to use their higher leverage guys, they put some pitches on some of those guys late in the game. That if you make it to Monday, might really pay off. I mean, it really will. And so just not laying down and making them chase the game a little bit and have to use some guys so that they didn't get in a situation where we were within striking distance of a really bad inning, not only caused some momentum shift for us, I think, but also, if you make it to Monday, they don't have quite as rested of a bullpen as they probably thought they would have after being up 9-0.
Yeah. Well, and you're down 9-0 going into the sixth, and you still didn't get run ruled too. I mean, that
Hmm.
just shows it. You kept on fighting, and so I think that's one thing for the Sooners that Sooner fans have to be happy about. They have to be proud of their team for not giving up and trying to do something. You're not trying to come back and win necessarily. You're just trying to keep your spirits alive. Try not to get out of this game with a goose egg and just feeling terrible going in. And not only that too, but the Sooners only had one less hit than the Tar Heels last night. That's
Yeah.
that's where it's just, man, the game of baseball is so weird. It's just that because you hit the ball in the right spots compared to us just not being able to get it through to those spots, you beat us because of that. That's what that came down to.
Hmm.
It came down to Sam Angelo being able to grab a hold of 2 of them, and I think both of his were off of Kyson, if I remember right. So
Yeah, I think so.
yes, I mean, it just him getting a hold of a couple of them, and just yeah, I mean that's the main thing. I think 3 home runs against the Sooners or against Kyson last night, which is he's never let up more than 1 in a single game. So I
Hmm.
mean that's the difference of the game. There is just that North Carolina was more aggressive when they were able to connect their bats, where Oklahoma was connecting. It's not that the bats were quiet. It's not that the offense was just completely stagnant. It's just that North Carolina's defense was on top of it. I think the scouting was better. They were in the right zones at the right time. And if you notice what they were doing too, I understand the go to one because go to first base because you're trying to cut off the man that you can get him out,
Mm-hmm.
and just tag out. But what North Carolina kept on doing last night was go to second base and cut off the lead man. They can't get a man in scoring position. And they just did that over and over and over again. And it was so frustrating to watch because Oklahoma couldn't get past first base. And that was another thing that I think North Carolina just did really well at.
The strikeouts early too, and I get it. I'm not discounting that. The guy that we saw pitching, DeCaro, is a phenomenal pitcher. I mean, he is fantastic, and it was the combined strikeouts with, because I mean, putting the ball in play, anything can happen. I mean, we saw them make a couple of defensive, mistakes as well. When you're not putting the ball in play and you're continuing to see yourself get down, progressively, 7 runs, then 9 runs, it just makes it, feel like, no matter what we do, it's almost going to be impossible to come back in this game. But I think if we're gonna do something, if we're gonna make some noise, the strikeouts have to go away. We have to get back to that mentality of we're gonna walk or we're gonna put it in play. That's just gonna be it. And even if we get weak contact, so be it. But we're not gonna strike out. And then the pitching is something I'm sure we need to talk about here at some point. Cam Johnson coming in and throwing the way he did was exciting.
Yeah.
I think if we're going to make any sort of a run at this thing, there's going to have to be some guys on this pitching staff that have an effort like we saw from Jet Lotus in last year's regional, where he went like I think 5 or 6 innings of couple run baseball. We're going to have to do that to get back to a regional final and win the thing. So it's going to be interesting to see who steps up on the pitching staff.
Yeah, and there could be a guy, like what Cam Johnson did last night. You're right too. He came in and he had 3 strikeouts in the first inning. I mean, the one just didn't count as an out because Easton dropped it. And I understand, that's a tough. A catcher is another tough position. A lot of pressure on the catcher too. But yes, I mean, he had 3 strikeouts in that first inning that he came out there. So I mean, just a great performance for him. And for the young guys like Cam Johnson, if they were to come in there and show out like that and show that they've got some kind of potential, you're talking about playing time next season. This season might be coming to a close, but you're talking about playing time next season. Whether you end up transferring or staying with Oklahoma, obviously we hope that they stay. Especially if you show that your potential means that you should be playing. But you're talking about playing time next season and probably significantly more playing time because of what you're doing in the postseason, and they know what you're capable of. And so there's a lot more potential and a lot more potential that the coaches see in that situation. But let's go ahead and jump into the matchup today. The one that we know is going to happen is Oklahoma against Nebraska. Going back to that Nebraska game, that game went pretty similarly to how I would have expected it to have gone. I didn't think Oklahoma would score as much as I guess frequently as they did, but it pretty much went as well as I thought. And in fact, when I saw Oklahoma fans just kind of tuning out and just we won this game, we might even run rule them, I was thinking to myself, be careful, because the few times that I have watched Nebraska, so they've had like several walk-off wins when I'm watching them. I went to go watch them live. I went to Lincoln to watch them play against Creighton earlier on this season, and it was a fun game because Nebraska was just getting dominated, and I think they were down 4 runs going into the 9th inning. It came down to the bottom of the 9th inning. And they scored 3, had bases loaded constantly. And the only reason they didn't win that game was just because I felt like their coaches were too nervous of them running aggressively on the bases. If they would have just
Mm.
let them loose, they won that game easily. And so, that was another one against Creighton, who, again, another good baseball team.
It's a regional team, yeah, for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah. And so, and in fact, I think they're actually going forward in their regional too, if I remember right.
I thought they had lost last night, but they won their first
Yeah,
game.
yeah, they did lose one, so yeah, they have a chance in their regional, and so yeah, they would have to beat North Dakota State today, and then Arkansas for the final. So yeah, I mean, my point being though is that this is just what Nebraska does.
Hmm.
Nebraska is that pesky team that does not go away, and so that's one thing that I would say for me going into this game. Watch out for Nebraska and you know their pesky nature, just being able to stick around in ball games, and then even to kind of put a little bit of fear in you and score in bunches, because that's just what they do throughout the season. That's what Nebraska has done against several other teams. Even again, going back to the Big Ten tournament against Michigan State, they were down in that game, and it
Yeah.
seemed like they were out. I think they even had a couple of guys injured in that game. At least one guy was injured. I think that might have been their third baseman, if I remember correctly. Um, but then they end up making it out of that game alive because they're able to score in bunches and get themselves out of that deficit. So, I think for Nebraska, that's what is kind of biggest on my play is just watch out for their ability to score in bunches. And of course, I feel bad for Jason Bowden because he got in a situation where again frustrations build up, and you know that you're missing it by this much. If you've been in that situation or any situation similar to that, I'm an avid golfer. When I take a golf swing and I take my practice swing, it feels clean. And whenever I connect with the ball and it doesn't feel that clean and I know what I messed up, that's even more frustrating. And I felt like that was kind of what I saw with Jason Bowden. And I'm just kind of speculating, was that he felt it. He felt what he was doing wrong, and it just like was eating at him and frustrating him. He knows that he can hit that spot, and so then he's pissed off wanting to get that in there, and it just isn't clicking. And so and ultimately not able to get himself out of that jam. You have to be careful against Nebraska that if you get in that situation, because they will capitalize. And sure enough,
Hmm.
that's exactly what they were able to do in that first game. So ultimately, another thing too with Nebraska is they have a lot of pitchers, and none of them are to the level of what Oklahoma's got on the pitching staff, but they're all just good enough where Nebraska is comfortable with putting anybody in the game. I
Hmm.
think I
Yeah.
think when I was counting, they have like 20 some pitchers, and I'm pretty sure they're willing to put any one of them in the game. You name one, they'll throw them in. If second inning, first inning, third inning, I don't care where it's at. They'll throw a guy in there just to see what he's made of. So that's another thing for Oklahoma. So you've got to get those bats rolling, get them rolling quick like you did in game one against Nebraska, because they're able to score late.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I mean, you do not, I mean, you can't overlook them or your season's over. So I don't think that's, a concern, but this still
No.
falls into squarely a game that you should win if you're OU. I did, OU has a ton to play for. I mean, we haven't even talked about the fact that, Oregon has
Yeah.
been bounced from their regional. And if you win this thing, you have the opportunity to bid for hosting a super regional. So, I mean, there's so much to play for. I would expect them to come out pissed off. Like, I wouldn't want to be Nebraska right now. I don't think anybody in that Sooner dugout's very happy with what transpired last night. And so I would expect the team to come out a little bit pissed off. I'd like to see them put a 4 or 5 spot up in an inning. I mean, even though we did score 7 against Nebraska, I feel like it's been a minute and a long time since we've seen OU put up a 5 run inning or just something, demoralizing. So I really would like to see that just for them to play looser and just have fun. Like those 5 run innings, when you're doing that and batting around, it just lifts you in a way that I think they need right now. So I'd love to see that. That's really what I'm hoping for.
Yeah. I mean, it would definitely be big, especially for this game. And you're right too. That was something I meant to even bring up too. Oregon losing their regional, which Oklahoma, the Chapel Hill regional would go against the winner of the Eugene regional, which is not Oregon. They're completely eliminated. Went 0-2. So we can laugh at the Oregon Ducks. Number one team in the Big Ten, but they can't even win their own regional, and can't even beat Nebraska, who Oklahoma just beat.
Yeah.
No, so so Oklahoma does have that chance to host a super regional if they can make it out. But the road ahead means that there's a doubleheader today for Oklahoma if they were to win first game. So they have to beat Nebraska, then North Carolina tonight, and then North Carolina again tomorrow. So that's the road, and that was kind of my joke about getting 3 times harder. It literally is. So if you would have won last night, if Oklahoma would have won last night, you just need one win. Now that you lost, you need 3 straight wins, and so it gets so much more difficult now. But making it out of this regional is huge for Oklahoma. It's huge for the program. I've seen fans frustrated about and I know you're one of them, Brandon, and it's a just thing to be frustrated about. Is frustrated that Oklahoma baseball doesn't get more attention from the higher ups within the program or within the university, and this is a great way to do that. First year in
Hmm.
the SEC, you made it to the postseason. First year in the SEC, you can make it out of the regionals and host a super regional to bring in that revenue through Oklahoma baseball. What better way to shout out at the higher ups in the university to say we need some attention here. That's the way to do it. And for the guys that are moving on like Kyson and I'm not sure. You think Easton comes back for another year? I
No, he's
I,
gone. I mean,
yeah, I wouldn't think so.
we'll do a whole episode after the season's on. We always go through the percentages. We rate our percentages of who's going and who's staying. We have historically gotten just absolutely pillaged by the draft. Even guys like Carter Frederick last year, who you would have thought was going to stay, gets drafted in the last round. Brett Squires from the 2022 team that wasn't even on our draft, really radar, signs as an undrafted free agent. And, they both made some pretty solid money. And that's where the NIL money has to come in. I think for baseball, talking about getting love from the school, NIL money to me for baseball is less about let's pay some recruit a bunch of money to come to OU, and more about can you retain some of these really solid guys from the draft, where if you can keep them at school, you just having a guy to me that's proven in baseball is so much more valuable than the young hot prospect. And so that's really a big deal. But I don't want to I don't think yesterday was or anything that's transpired this year from the way that we were losing. We didn't get blown out of many games.
Hmm.
We shot ourselves in the foot a lot, and I don't know that falls under the category of we weren't as talented. And so I definitely, even if we lose this thing, I don't want it to be necessarily like, well, we lost this regional because we weren't talented enough. We are this year, and we got to do better. But the fact of the matter still remains, if you were to compare us to the basketball season this year, which people thought was a step in the right direction, and yeah, I would tend to agree with that. We got
Yeah.
a postseason win. You know, this would be like making the regional final is like making the round of 32 in basketball. And if you look at it, we're facing essentially the number 4 team in the country, where basketball didn't have that type of a matchup. I don't think to face the number 4 team in the country in the postseason, game 2. So I think that's interesting. We've got to get more support. Watching some of these regionals, I'm sure that you have been watching and seeing the type of atmospheres that there are, and the number of fans that are there, makes me think of last year a lot, and just wishing that we had a bigger, better ballpark to fill, with more fans,
Well,
and
and
have that
and
kind of environment.
the project is there. The project is drawn up for it. From what
Yeah.
I understand, the project is ready to go. They just have to reach that funding mark, and it takes Oklahoma fans. And I will say, I personally want to shout out Oklahoma fans because I think they've done extremely well. Somebody actually sent me a link, and it shows the. And I'll have to pull it up, and I'll try to share that. But somebody sent me a link with the record attendances for Oklahoma sports, and you can go to baseball, and there are several record attendance. Along that list, they might only be like eighth on the list or something, but there's several from the last 2 seasons for Oklahoma baseball, and so that is huge. And I think Oklahoma fans did really well this year. And the surprising thing about that is that there were a lot of games that were either rainy or just cold and miserable.
Cold early on, yeah, for
Yeah,
sure.
and so and even right now, it's not really as warm as it should be. It's June 1st. It should be like blazing hot out there, and so the fact that it's been very chilly and not enjoyable weather to be out there, and Oklahoma fans are still filling up the stadium as best as they can. That's something that will be overlooked. Is that, well, we should have sold out more. Yeah, but the weather was pretty crappy, and I don't blame people for not wanting to go out to that. So softball also had some smaller attendances whenever the weather was that way. So I'm not gonna I'm not gonna throw too much shade at the fans for that. So I think Oklahoma fans are on the right track. Oklahoma baseball is absolutely on the right track, and I think as long as that support keeps on rolling in, as long as guys like you and Johnny keep on pressing for the sport to keep on growing. Oklahoma is now in the SEC, and baseball needs to be a higher priority. If you want to compete in the SEC, baseball has to be at a higher priority, and I think it's getting there. And to your point too, Oklahoma even they got a postseason win, and if they're able to do it again today, possibly even 2 or 3 wins in the postseason. But even in the SEC tournament, beating 2 teams that one swept Oklahoma, and the other beat Oklahoma in the series against Georgia and Kentucky. So you were able to avenge yourself in the SEC tournament, get a couple wins there. That solidified your postseason hopes. And going on to the postseason, getting into the regionals, and so another thing too. This is how good the SEC is. 16 teams in the SEC, 8 of them hosted a regional.
Yeah.
That's just stupid. 13 of them made the postseason. The only 3 not to: South Carolina, Texas A&M, surprisingly, because they lost to Missouri. So South Carolina, Texas A&M, and Missouri. Just absolutely incredible. So this is a huge conference for baseball, and even if today is the last time that we see Oklahoma baseball this season, I think they're on the right track. I think they're doing the right things. Skip Johnson has to be our guy. We have to find ways to keep him around as long as he's willing to. I know he jokes about being able to retire and go hunting, but he still does love this game, and he loves the players playing for him. And you can tell that the more that you see of him. So he's a great guy. But Brandon, I appreciate you so much for jumping on with me, and for jumping on kind of at a late notice too. I just reached out to you yesterday about doing it. So let my listeners know where they can find you and Johnny's stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have the Oklahoma baseball experience. If you follow OU baseball, hopefully you're familiar with it. It's the Oklahoma baseball experience on Twitter. It's a podcast that we do. We have been very fortunate to get some good access. We've been doing it for a decent amount of years now. It's kind of crazy how quickly those years go. But I think this is our 3rd year for it. We used to do Twitter Spaces early on in 2022. The Oklahoma baseball experience, all things OU baseball. We really don't touch on many other sports, so it's very niche. We're both huge baseball fans, OU baseball fans. And like I said, I've been fortunate enough to be able to talk to a lot of the players, and it's kind of cool, I think, at this point with the catalog that we've had now for multiple seasons. It's not just the star players we get on there. We get some of the bench guys too. And it's just really cool to learn more about the players and the team in a way that you don't really get to in other sports, especially big higher level sports like typically football and basketball. So it's a lot of fun, and we just like promoting the baseball team as much as possible.
Yeah, and even with those other sports where you do kind of get it maybe more often than baseball, the fact that you guys are bringing that to the sport of baseball and specifically for Oklahoma baseball is better because the way that you grow the sport is you get the fans to have some sort of connection to the sport or
Right.
to the team. And there's no better way to do that than feel like you know the player because you listen to their favorite. They told you their favorite song, and they told you their favorite restaurant. So you have a connection with that now, and
We've got
just
a dragon tattoo, stuff like
yeah,
that.
exactly. So yeah, absolutely. Everybody go check out the Oklahoma Baseball Experience on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts, and on social media. You guys do way better on social media than I do, especially on Instagram. I'm not good about getting stuff put out on there, but you guys do a great job over there. And again, I appreciate what you guys are doing for Oklahoma baseball. But I want to thank everybody so much for tuning in with us, kind of a late notice live here on Sooner Spotlight. Make sure to get on your TV at 11 a.m. Central Time, noon Eastern Time to support your Oklahoma baseball team as they go against the Nebraska Cornhuskers for the second time in this regional, and hopefully a very similar or maybe even a bigger performance than the first one. But again, thank everybody so much for watching, for listening. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, share it with a friend. Check out everything that we do here at Sooner Spotlight at Soonerspotlight.com. We'll catch you next time. Boomer.
Sooner.